Hey, referencing the early part of the documentary, how many more people do you think need to be dead before the real story of why the Funkin Dojo ended comes out?
I think it's about time right now. They got fed up with Marty, Dory's wife. She called constantly complaining and bitching about everything. Dory Funk Jr.'s a nice guy of legendary talent, but he was letting Marty came up to the camps.
I heard a specific story. I heard a specific incident.
The T-shirt?
The T-shirt and the remark she made.
Yes. The Creative Services Department in the Stamford office, because there was a camp that Dory and Tom had held, and I think it might have been the one with Kurt Angle. And maybe, Rhino might have been there, and I can't remember who all else, but it was Christian, Edge, people you'd recognize. 6 or 7 or 8 of them. And so the Creative Services Department worked up a little sweatshirt design with caricatures of Dory and Tom and the students in that camp and made like a dozen sweatshirts just as a nice thing to give to the guys that came in the camp. Marty called the office and complained that it made Dory look bald. He only had one squiggly hair. It was a caricature, and Dory is bald. But he had one squiggly hair, and she complained about the shirts and wanted him to redo the shirts. And then that's when I swear to God, if I'm lying, I'm flying. And when I told JR about this idea, I said, I've talked to Danny Davis. I said, Louisville, the guys can live cheaper. Then because they would need to live there. You're bringing them up now and putting them in a $150 a night hotel because that's all there is within 20 miles of here. I said they can get apartments for $500 a month in Louisville. They can live there. They can train. Dory can fly up from Florida in half the time to Kentucky as he does, and you won't have to spend as much money to put him up, and it'll all be cheap. And that's what he said. Well, Dory might not be continuing. Why? Marty. Okay.
You knew right away.
Well, it just...
I was backstage. See, I didn't just hear stories. I was backstage at a lot of dentist shows.
Yeah.
I was in the back for a lot of those shows.
But that's the thing is that sometimes the office loves dealing with an individual, Ricky Steamboat, Dory Funk Jr., possibly Cody Rhodes, but they just don't want to deal with their wife. Especially when the wife is doing all the husband's business talking. Or, in the case of Bagwell, that was the rib, Mrs. Bagwell, is because his mother kept legitimately, with a straight face, calling the office, suggesting different things that they should do for Buff Bagwell in Atlanta. And, of course, that immediately got around because you couldn't keep that a secret. So but anyway, back to
the idea that it was, you made him look bald. He's looked like Charlie Brown since 1968.
I know.
What the fuck? That's what gets me. It's not just like, oh, she was acting nuts. That's the issue she raised.
That's the hill she wanted to die on, to use Jim Ross's favorite phrase. But anyway, it was a nice documentary special, brought back some nice memories, brought back some more unpleasant memories. But that's what we've done. And they don't want a wrestling school now because they don't want wrestlers because they don't think they're wrestling. And they're not wrestling. They should be, but they're not. It's not. But the disconnect is they think there's something better than wrestling. And when in actuality, there's something much more boring than wrestling. But they're not going to have a wrestling school anymore because they're training entertainers and actors and Cirque du Soleil performers who are interchangeable and do what they're told, and they're happy to be there. And, and that'll last until they CGI everybody. Whereas we taught wrestlers not only how to wrestle, but how to be wrestlers and how to think about wrestling and how to take care of themselves. And sometimes we taught people how to say, you know what? Fuck you, I ain't doing this shit. Because there's times I would tell guys, look, you got to get along and you got to do what you need to do. But at some point you need to draw the line and say, okay, I'm not happy with this and this ain't going to be good for me, and do what Mick Foley did on a couple of different occasions in Atlanta when things weren't going favorably for him and say, rather than stick around here and be beat to powder, I'll go do something else and get myself over and come back in a better spot. And the office didn't like me telling guys that. And the office didn't like me telling guys when the office was doing things that was detrimental to their future. But me being the honest prick that I am, I couldn't help it.